The last S of making ideas stick is stories. We've talked about how to make ideas simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, and emotional. But stories are a key factor that makes messages stick. And stories help drive people to action. A good way to think about stories is like a flight simulator. You've probably never been in a flight simulator, but you can imagine what it is. Right? You get inside a box. You're not actually flying a plane, but it helps you get a sense of what it's like to fly a plane. You see a screen in front of you with what a pilot might see. You have some controls in front of you to help you get a sense of what it's like to drive that plane. And the experience rocks you back and forth even, like you might if you were actually sitting in the cockpit. Stories do exactly that. They help us follow along with a narrative like we're actually there. And in fact, research shows that when we hear a story, some aspects of your brain light up just as if you were engaging with that experience yourself. If I tell you to imagine looking to the horizon, for example, your brain activates like you're actually looking to that point that's out there. Stories act like simulators to help us to follow along some information, but by doing so, by involving us more in the process, we're not just listening, we're actively listening. And as a result, we're more likely to remember something. Let me give you an example of how to use stories effectively. Take the brand HP, huge multinational brand. And one thing they want to do is convince people that they're committed to innovation. So imagine HP says, here at HP, we're committed to innovation. Think about that for a moment. If you had to say from a number from 0, not very committed, to 100, quite committed to innovation, how committed to innovation would you say that HP is? Pick a number between 0 and 100. You can hold it in your mind or you can write it down on a sheet of paper in front of you. Got that number? Okay. Let's think about a different way to communicate that idea of HP being committed to innovation. Let me tell you a story, for example, a famous HP story about the stockroom at HP. So the stockroom is a place where all the electrical and mechanical gizmos are kept for engineers to work on projects. It's not just the cheap stuff like paper clips and like sheets of paper. It's also expensive components, like things they use to build machines. Now, legend has it that one of the company founders, Bill, visited a plant on Saturday, and he found that lab stock area locked. Well, he immediately went down to maintenance, grabbed a bolt cutter, and cut the padlock off the door. And then he left a note that was found on Monday morning that said, "Don't ever lock this door again. Thanks, Bill." Now, what was his point? Well, his point was that engineers not only have free access to HP equipment, they're actually encouraged to take it home for their personal use. The idea is whether they're doing something directly related to work projects or just fooling around with the equipment at work or at home, they'll learn, and as a result, reinforce the company's commitment to innovation. That's sort of an engaging story. Right? You followed along as I was telling it, but notice what else happened. You were mentally simulating what it was like to be someone in that stockroom. You could see Bill picking up the bolt cutters. You could imagine what it was like when those bolt cutters cut through the lock and the lock fell off the door. And at the end, imagine I asked you again to say how committed to innovation is HP. Now that you've heard this story, from 0 to 100, how committed to innovation are they? Well, before you might have said, I don't know, a 30, maybe a 40, maybe even a 50. But after hearing this story, you probably said more like a 60 or a 70, because hearing this story helped convince you that they're committed to innovation. By following along that narrative, it became more memorable and convinced you of that key idea they wanted to communicate. And so stories can be an effective way to get our point across. As we've talked about, there are 6 key factors to getting ideas to stick. Certain things tend to stick in memory, but it's not random or chance or luck how that works. Just like finches with certain beaks are more successful, or just like giraffes with longer necks are more likely to reach the food, stories and information are more successful when they fit with their environment. But their environment isn't the leaves on a plant or the ants that are underneath a piece of bark. Their environment is us. The way our minds are designed leads certain information to stick. We can't remember everything. There are thousands of pieces of information that happen to us every day on a daily basis. We see dozens of ads, dozens of people talking to us, and different ideas that we're supposed to remember. It's impossible to allocate our attention and our mind to each one of those things. But if we design messages and ideas to take advantage of how we're built, we'll be more successful. As we talked about, to craft sticky stuff, we need to think about success. We need to think about ideas that are simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional stories. When we think about simple, how can we make sure that less is more? When we think about unexpected, how can we think about using a curiosity gap or breaking a pattern? When we think about concrete and credible, how can we put numbers in context or make people see that we're more credible? Emotional, how can we get people to care? And stories build a narrative that carries our message. If we craft sticky stuff, we can make our messages more sticky and more likely to drive people to action.